Hey everybody, thank you for pulling into the Palmetto Pit Stop. I am Tony here with Adam. We are now on the heels of what we saw down at Daytona. The chaos, as it always lives up to. It was an interesting race. There was a little bit of some parity here and there, some names that maybe you didn't expect to be at the front that were up there, but overall, as things ended, as we got through it, we got to the end, as races, of course, have to have that finish, and Byron finding the win, that ever so recognizable font, number 24, found the victory through all that chaos. And my favorite racer, Tyler Reddick, number 45, sneaking right in there somehow, some way. I don't even know how. It's ridiculous that he found his way to second place, but he did. And this is something now where we went through a lot of different phases of this race. I was really hopeful to see Busch try to make it to get to that point. I know he was really disappointed on his crash. And there were a good handful of them, some scarier moments as we went through this. And Priest, another wreck with him. That's going to be another thing to discuss as we go through this and we pick apart the pieces as we go on now to the NASCAR season. Fully entrenched now. Things are rolling along. The energy was there, the passion out on the track, and it was great to see after more of the lull that happened with the rain delay of this race that things really took off and heated up as they dried off the track. Things dried up and fans could, of course, get what they paid for to be there to see. Adam, initial thoughts as we go on now for the tail end. We are past the Daytona 500. We're looking towards Atlanta. But just going over this, everything that happened, more of what we can anticipate from Daytona. It happened out there. What do you think of a little bit more of the action on the track?
Yeah, so from a fan's perspective, it was a pretty good race. Wouldn't say it was a legendary 500, but definitely an exciting one.
Yeah, good way to put it.
You just knew the wrecks were coming, and a lot of people have pointed out that as an issue with the 500 is that Denny Hamlin specifically went on an entire podcast worth of a rant just talking about how the 500 used to be a lot of skill, who could bring the best car and get out of trouble, make the best moves, and all that, and now it's more so about survival, and not to discredit William Byron at all. I mean, he's one of the best drafting track racers right now in the next gen, so not to discredit him winning the 500 back-to-back. Hamlin was the last driver to do it, and I can't remember the stat, but I think only 4 drivers have ever done that. So very exclusive company for William Byron, and like you said, the very legendary 24 with the Flames again this year. In my opinion, a much better car than last year's the white Exalta. But it is a bit of a concern that these cars have gotten, so safe and so easy to drive that, drivers are just willing to destroy them for blocks or just making a move. We saw Joey Logano and Ricky Stenhouse just making a... Like, what was the attempt
just
there?
Just throwing that block in there.
Just throwing a block with 17 to go is like, you have plenty of time. Logano has been at the front all day. He survived, what was his issue? He had some issue that he had to keep going to pit road for, and he survived that, got his lap back under caution, and he still, I think he lost a gear. I could be wrong. But he got his lap back, and he worked his way back up, and he was leading, and it looked like he was going to get a second 500 10 years after his first. And then he just throws an awful block. Granted, weird move by Stenhouse to be going that hard with 17 laps to go, especially when you kind of know that big crash at the end is going to happen. You want to survive that. You don't want to be that, and that's what it was. Caused that huge pile up, and just... ruined a lot of people's days. Penske should have probably won that race. One of those drivers, Cindric, was there at the end. Hamlin, if not Penske, should have won that race. And I as a fan, it was, it's exciting to watch the big crashes and exciting.
Because that's a handful of people just want to see.
Yeah, it's like I just want to watch for the crashes. But these are drivers, and they're supposed to be the best drivers in America, and they are. But it becomes a demolition derby when someone makes a move at a dumb point. Cole Custer door slammed Denny Hamlin on the backstretch. Like, what do you plan on getting out of that? You know, if you're gonna door slam them on the straightaway before the line. Then it's like, okay, that's anyone's. That's play ball essentially. Just have at it, and it's just become a point where the 500 is just more about surviving than it is talent. And it's a shame because the 500 it's NASCAR's Super Bowl, and as a fan, very exciting race, but. Just if you are like a super diehard who has watched the sport over the years, it just feels. You probably hear those sirens, but oh well.
We're having some bad weather here, so I'm not too surprised. A lot of rain. It is very cold here in South Carolina. We really need to get by this. That is for certain. Just to throw that in there.
Yeah, absolutely. I could use some of the Florida weather right now.
To put things lightly.
Yeah,
no doubt.
Yeah, but. Just to wrap it up, so I'm not going on a whole rant, it's just the 500, it's still a big deal. You see that when the drivers win. William Byron just super excited to win. And again, congrats to him for making history going back-to-back in the 24. 20 years after Jeff Gordon won his last 500. So very, very cool for that connection too. But it just seems like NASCAR... in this new car has just accepted that this is super speedway racing. And it's a shame because super speedway racing is in the early thousands, in the 2010s, it was a lot of fun to watch. Even tandem drafting, which a lot of fans don't look back on too fondly. I thought tandem drafting was a lot of fun because you still needed the skill to do it. And it was exciting to watch. Like we saw for Dale Earnhardt's last win in 2000, he went from 17th to first in 4 laps, just drafting, passing cars at Talladega. We saw, who was it? Oh, Carl Edwards and Brad Keselowski for Keselowski's first career win. They just raced from back of the pack all the way to leading the race just off of these tandem runs that they got. And it feels like the magic of the 500 has really been limited by this new car and just even the drivers to an extent. Like I said, that Cole Custer had no business door slamming Hamlin in that position. If he did it to win the race, okay, I get where you're coming from, but just something needs to happen with either the car and the drivers. They have to get away from being okay with these crashes.
For sure, and Custer was having a good race. He was at the end there. He was fighting up there along with the best of them, and perhaps a little bit more of some rookie excitement. Can't categorize it truly as a mistake. Sometimes it's just rough driving, but not necessarily the proper place for that. And everyone's going to have a variety of opinions on it. It is what it is, especially for people that are not fans of Denny Hamlin, because he was setting himself up that he could have won that race. Going back to what I said before, Busch had the potential to win that race. We could have even seen Bubba Wallace holding on to win that race. He had some really nice lead laps.
I don't even
there.
know what happened to him. There was a crash, and then suddenly
he got out to the
had
outside lane. Just trickled on back. Yeah. Just trickled on back. It's like, all right, sorry, man. And you were up there though.
Yeah, there was the big crash. And suddenly Bubba Wallace was on pit road with his hood up. It's like, what happened to him?
That's right. And then he got
and then that was it.
The race.
Yeah, that was it. And his day was over. And it's like, okay, I wish I knew what happened there.
Maybe that bad luck cloud might be following him into this season.
It really is.
I don't know, man.
He had it, and I wouldn't say he had it, but he was up there for a while, leading,
had some nice lead
battling
laps.
for the lead, and just. A shame, but that's just how the 500 is now. It's not about who's leading the race, it's who's leading after half the field has crashed out.
Yeah, but just going over the race and just watching it unfold the way that it did, but just a couple of the drivers, between him and even Logano, both had really good cars in that race. Both were running really good. Both easily could have been drivers I would have picked as winners. Cindric obviously had a great day out there. But, none of those guys found that checkered flag because of the chaos or just, yet again, some bad luck that happened. But, Bubba was running really well. Just analyzing that race, seeing his top 10 position, finding yourself to the front. So, it's just tough to see when you go over these races, guys that clearly had an opportunity to win. Something odd happened or a bit of bad luck. We know it happened to Chris Buescher a lot last year, who ended up not making the playoff. But as life goes sometimes with these races, and it just what ensued. Sometimes there's not necessarily a great explanation for it. It just happens, and some things are out of your control, and that's a lot of what we saw at Daytona.
Yeah, but we start off really negative, and some good news. Jimmy Johnson in the top three position. Right. He gets a podium.
I'm sure a lot of people are shocked at that in the legacy cars. Like, is that really Jimmy Johnson, top 5?
Yeah.
Like, oh, man, he's back.
That's his best finish in the 500 since...
Like what?
Since he won in 2013, I believe.
2013.
And his best finish as a part-time driver. So... Very excited.
So.
Yeah, as much as I did not like Johnson as a driver growing up, just because I was a Tony Stewart fan. So if anyone wasn't Tony Stewart winning, I wasn't happy with him. But now looking back as just a regular fan, seeing him in third was pretty great. Very very happy. Legacy had a great Daytona. John Hunter Nemechek, first career top 5 in the Cup Series, and then Eric Jones, who should have won that first duel. He finished really 11th. Yeah, so he was able to survive the carnage, get a decent finish, all things considered.
Some nice maneuvers from him. No, truly. Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. Eric Jones, truly, some nice maneuvers to get away from some of those wrecks, because he was right in the thick of a few of them.
He definitely was. I mean, he was the one who saw Ryan Preece just catch air going into turn 3. So hopefully that's a sign of things to come for Legacy. I think a win from Eric Jones is a long overdue. Hasn't won since, I believe, the Southern 500 a few years ago. Still just waiting to get back to victory lane. And Legacy is obviously in a rebuilding phase. Still trying to get used to Jimmy Johnson calling the shots instead of Richard Petty being involved in that. But very, very good finish. I'm sure they were over the moon with that. If Jimmy Johnson could have won as a part-time driver in 2025, that would have been... I think a great end to his career.
It would have been truly interesting, and that would have been as cool as that would have been. Definitely a social media worthy moment, or just as a paying homage to fans that have been around for a little bit longer, and just one of those recognizable names. Just going back 10, 20 years, whatever, and just seeing that happen definitely would have been an interesting start to the season. Truly, I would have loved to have seen that, just because it would have been a great headline, and just to go out that way right now, still part-time racing, but just to get that top five finish, still fantastic to see, and truly happy for him through everything that happened with that race, to find a way to get up and have that really nice finish. So all in all, some good storylines as this race went on, good finishes. Obviously not the best day for a handful of drivers, but as it's going to be, there's a lot of guys out there, and you're not going to have positive stories to everyone. Depending on where you are, if you have secured a playoff spot already, what you're looking to do on a race by race basis. But great overall. It's just nice to see a couple good things and have some good tidbits there as we start out the season, and try to build a little bit more on that, because of course heading out to Atlanta, we're going to go one state over here from us here in South Carolina, as we're keeping that pace and going on to the early goings of this season.
Yeah, and as great a day as it was for some of these guys at Legacy, and of course William Byron, Tyler Reddick, that those people who were able to survive the carnage. We do have someone who did survive the carnage that is probably not celebrating now, because as we were recording about 30 minutes ago, Jeff Gluck on Twitter said that Chase Briscoe, with an illegal modification to his rear spoiler, loses 100 points, 10 playoff points. Crew chief James Small is suspended for 4 races, and the team is fined $100,000, which means Chase Briscoe was in 10th in points. He's now 39th with negative 67 points going into Atlanta. So we mentioned that just before we started recording, and you said it best. He's like, he better win.
That's all he needs to. That's just such a tough blow to come back from, when you're going through this humble beginning of the season and you have a setback like this, where you're getting, the fine is what it is. Your team has to get over that, but to be able to have those points taken away, just the stranglehold that's going to put you in. Obviously, it's a long season. You have plenty of opportunities to notch a victory, but now you're just getting to a point where, all right, we really need it. Might need to be a little bit more daring. Might need to throw a little bit more caution to the wind at some point later in the season. You best hope that you have an incredible run or two and have that ability to win a race, or else this is really going to put a little bit of a damper on your season, and it might be something that you're stuck looking back on. It's tough, but rules are rules, and people are gonna find things out if something is modified in the wrong way. There's reason these things are in place, and getting hit with it. It's definitely tough for Briscoe fans out there. But hey, you're starting out the season. You have some time to look on this, reflect on it, and just have some great races as you look forward into the season. But it is what it is as we go into it now.
Yeah, and once upon a time, many years ago, Mark Martin, this was under the old Winston format, so full season championship, won a race, can't remember which race. This was, I'm pretty sure, before I was even born, so it might be a little fuzzy on the details.
That's all right, man.
Yeah, but won a race, was found to have an illegal spacer in his engine, I believe, was docked 50 points, ended up losing the championship by about 30, I believe. So this is, I know it's a different format, but that can easily, 100 points is a lot, especially in modern NASCAR. So, I mean, what is that, like 3 races? Or no, it's like 2 races worth if he goes back to back, and gets max points. So it's not, something to just toss away or just like, well, we'll brush it off. It's like, this is a massive penalty. And it could easily, if he does not win, be the difference between him making the playoffs and not. So Chase Briscoe, I know that he will bounce back. I know it's been only 1 race, but he's looked good for Joe Gibbs. I have high hopes for him this season. Sadly, all of my picks for the 500 did not go too well. However, hopefully going forward, my guessing is not or my predictions are not a curse.
And that's just something, of course, where we go on to this. You just have to, as I said before, reflect, move on, and even with those playoff points that are going to be taken off if you are able to make the playoffs, this is going to be one thing that a lot of other drivers could just look at and say, all right, we really need to make sure these inspections are done. Need to make sure my car is good to go. Hey, guys, don't be trying to slip something under the radar, because we don't want to be in that position where we're not able to build on this because of the current playoff format. We don't want to have points taken away. You don't want to have to climb a mountain for a season that already could be a little bit difficult if you're not able to notch a win. So just food for thought as we're going into this, and that's just definitely a blow to to Briscoe and to his fan base. But this is what we are left with right now. Not good news. Not good news as we're getting to this start of the season, because you never want to start behind, but it's just more motivation, I guess, to hopefully find your way to that checkered flag and that finish line before anyone else for any of these races. But that is where we are right now in terms of any big news. And that just came out today. Again, we're recording this on February 19th, by the way, the evening of the 19th on Wednesday. And that just came out this evening?
Yep, probably about 35, 40 minutes ago.
Okay, yep.
Yeah, around like 5:30. So big drawback for the Briscoe camp, but talk about the elephant in the room. That wreck for Ryan Preece. I think NASCAR has been made aware of how easily these cars flip. I want to know what their limit is when they're like, we need a new car.
It's something to definitely discuss, especially just going on to changing even just how the layout of these tracks are, taking away grass, because I believe that's the reason, 2 years ago, they took away the
for
grass
Ryan Preece,
because that crazy crash, man. All of those flips, even with the coverage talking about it, they referenced it to Talladega Nights with the Ricky Bobby crash. Just all those crazy flips and how, of course, the car just looks like it's ripping apart, and how dangerous some of these are when you can catch air. These cars are so light. To the point of the aerodynamics that comes with them for someone who understands a little bit more of how these cars are designed, why they're able to go so fast, and just how much of a hazard that could be. Luckily, the roll cage, the way that these cars are built, they're also made to protect the drivers, to make sure that they are solidified in place, that they are not having, permanent spinal damage or brain damage or anything as they're going into these races, because you're going so fast, and when you're tossed around, even just in a normal race without wrecking, it could take a little bit of a toll on your body. These guys are athletes in that sense, just like anyone else. But the danger is still there. I'm not sure exactly what the right answer is now, just sitting here and recording this. But, he was definitely afraid during that wreck. He said in his post-race interview, first thing I thought about when I began to catch air was my kid, his daughter. So, just feeling that fear, even with the safety that he had in that car, luckily he was able to walk away, just a couple little bruises maybe, but that's not going to be the case all the time. So you always have to look for a way to make perhaps the car safer, not even just making sure that, the interior of it, the roll cage and where the drivers are safe, but finding a way to have these cars not able to take air like this and adding to the danger of these wrecks for the sake of these drivers.
Yeah, definitely. And this car has already had so many issues that we've seen over the years, not just flips, but especially flips. I mean, we saw when it was debuted, this a little tiny little crash ended Alex Bowman's season and with a concussion, and then ended Kurt Busch's career with a concussion. So these cars are not really as safe as you would hope. So to see these cars catch air so easily because of that underpan, they have to get rid of it at some point. I mean, it's basically an Indy car, a Formula One car with a chassis on it. And then if you've ever watched IndyCar or open wheel in general, the way those cars catch flight, it's just a wild thing to watch, because they get a little air under it and the car just rips off the ground. And they're always very ugly crashes. And we've seen it with Priest. I mean, thankfully he's making light of it. I don't know if you follow him on Twitter, but he updated his profile picture to his head photoshopped onto an astronaut. So,
oh my gosh, no, I did not see that post.
He's had some violent crashes, and we've seen some violent crashes. So mix a car that gets off the ground way too easy with these super speedway races that always end in wrecks. In the big one, it's a combination that it's a ticking time bomb before somebody gets seriously hurt. We saw Eric Jones last year miss a few races because of a back injury, because that wasn't even a flip, he just hit the wall too hard at Talladega. So something, I don't know, there's people who get paid way more than I do to figure this stuff out, and it's one thing to be entertaining. It's one thing to, they're obviously going to use, because everyone is okay, they're obviously going to use stuff in promos. Ryan Preece's flip has been in the promos since it happened. But, you do have to consider these guys are human. And you have to take care of them. You can't just be, someone's probably going to barrel roll on these super speedways whenever we go, but it's entertaining. And it's a human body. Whatever's happening to the car is happening to the person too. And you're never going to erase flips. It's just a part of NASCAR. But this car, they wanted to slow it down and from what it used to be. And I don't think I've ever seen seasons where more cars have gone upside down. Just in this last year or two, you had Ryan Preece. Who was that? Was that Corey LaJoie last year at Talladega? Granted, that was a push. He got pushed over. And then he just took air at Michigan, just spinning out. It had nothing to do with grass. And then Josh Berry, again at Daytona last year, that car just turned over. Michael McDowell.
I was going to say the bad McDowell crash. Where was that at?
That was at Daytona as well.
Daytona?
But he did stay right side up. He just caught a lot of air. He did a quarter flip and came back down. So the roof flaps really helped. But in Ryan Preece's case, that car got off the ground if you watch the replay, like when it happened live, it looked like he was trapped on Eric Jones's car because he got hit from the side, and I thought he got wedged on top of Eric Jones. But then you see a different angle, and it's like, no, his car got hit from the side and then just did a wheelie and took off. So it's almost like the COT wing back in the day when that was first introduced. That car got backwards and then just would lift off because of the wing on the back, and that wing lasted. I don't even think it lasted 2 years. I think it was introduced in a few races in 2007, full time 2008, and by end of 2009, I think it was gone. So just not even 2 years into its full time season. So I think something has to be done with this, with the under part of this car, or else we're gonna keep seeing these flips, and it's only a matter of time. Like, you're playing with fire, you're gonna get burned.
It's a bit of a talking point, and it's still something that adds to the entertainment value of NASCAR. As you stated, there's going to be wrecks. There is. There's all these cars going around a track, going around a road course, whatever it is, at a certain high speed, and things are going to happen. Not necessarily just from mistakes, but for these drivers trying to jostle for position, trying to fight their way towards a win. It is going to happen. It's part of the sport, and it is something that, as an occurrence, it's just going to go over and over and over again. It's just to try and lessen the danger when it does go over is what we'd like to see, because you want to keep these guys safe. You want to make sure that they are confident in their own safety and not feeling as much fear if they are involved in a wreck. So that's also just something down the road for NASCAR to think about, along with anything else with plans for the future and these cars, because it is incredible to watch the speed and the talent that is out there on the track. But if it ends in a display where some guy or even a couple of them are fearing for their life, or these crashes look a little bit worse on TV. Yeah, for entertainment quality, sure. Yeah, it looks great on TV. Yeah, it's going to get posted on social media, but you got to think about the people that are in those cars. It's not just AI, driving those vehicles out there. There's all those drivers out, and this is something that is just worthy of a discussion and hopeful plans for the future as we go into this. And it's just one other of those storylines that's come out of Daytona starting out from the season, where you are going to find a little bit more of this chaos, perhaps more than some other tracks, but still just something to think about, between more of what we're getting with drafting and then, of course, super speedways. And there's all different types of features and safety things that could be implemented. It's just a matter of finding them and continuing to fine-tune it as we go forward into the future.
I agree, and I think it is possible that super speedways can get better, because they were great for the longest time, and now it's just, is my driver, it's no longer like, can my driver win? It's like, is my driver going to finish? And it's just become so... It's really taken the magic out of the Daytona 500, where it feels like the August Daytona race is almost like the bigger deal, because you have the added bonus of this is the cutoff race. So, but a good example of what super speedway tracks can look like, we now go from Daytona into Atlanta, which is where I think we got some of the best super speedway racing last year, in that amazing finish, the 3-wide drag race with Ryan Blaney, Kyle Busch, and the winner Daniel Suarez. So I'm very excited to see what Atlanta can bring. The hot take will be, I don't think we see a Daytona-esque flip at Atlanta. At least you'd hope not. It's not a very big track, so if someone's getting upside down there, something has gone horribly wrong. But it is a very exciting track. It's a fan favorite. I still wish it was a playoff race this year, if they're going to stick with the playoffs, but they have moved it. I believe it's in July now. I think it might be the race after Chicago, but I'm not too sure off the top of my head. But what do you think we're going to see now at Atlanta, especially the way a lot of the leaders of last week were taken out?
I mean, it's still something to really try to break down here. Perhaps a little less chaos. I'm thinking just gauging how this race panned out, and a little bit more of that ending up in the Daytona 500. We're going to see more of these issues, that it's going to be a little smoother. I'm anticipating a little bit smoother of a race, and perhaps those that are looking and leading and having good cars are going to find a little bit more of the promised land in the way of a top 5 finish, or perhaps a win. just trying to give an overview of that. And maybe just analyzing what happened last week. Maybe some guys learning from their mistakes, not being as daring, whether that be veterans or rookies, as we're trying to settle into this. So that would probably be my best take on it. Just over analyzing things that happened this past weekend and maybe trying to settle in a little bit more, perhaps being a bit more cautious. Of course, when you're going into the final few laps of a race, you can end up with some chaos, but in an overall sense, thinking that we're going to have a little bit of a smoother outlook, less wrecks, and maybe less blocking. So we'll see. We'll see what goes on there.
Yeah, we saw almost two different Atlanta races last year between the first and the second. We did have some big hits, but it wasn't, I don't think, at the fault of super speedway racing. We had sorry,
Yo, you're good,
just bumped Tony there. I think what was it? It was Kyle Larson. His car just snapped around on him and had that big hit with Chase Briscoe. But other than that, I think or was it Chase Briscoe? It was Chase Briscoe. But I don't think. Other than that, it feels like Atlanta is the premier super speedway race in terms of driver ability, because the moments remembered from those tracks are more of the finishes and the moves. So I'm very excited to see what the teams are going to do. I'm very excited to see what drivers are going to stand out. We saw the heavy hitters at Daytona before they crashed out, obviously. Hamlin, Wallace, Logano, Cindric, all those guys. So I think in that sense, we'll probably see them towards the front as well. They're just really, they're really solid super speedway racers. Joey Logano, very talented, even if he does make a little questionable choices at times on who to block and who to push and all that. But those were some of the best super speedway racers out there, and I don't think the winner might be a little different, but I think the leaders are going to be relatively the same.
It's something I would anticipate. There's just not enough time for adjustments or certain things to have a dramatic effect. Perhaps you're going to see changes a little bit more as you go further and further into the season. But this is definitely something I would anticipate, maybe a few changes as we're going at this. But no, I wouldn't be caught off guard to see Logano up there again. Maybe a little bit of a better run from Larson in this race would be something to watch. Perhaps a Reddick, a little bit more of some flashes from last year, as opposed to, again, as a fan, definitely lucked a little bit more into second place at Daytona. Other big part of the 23-11 team. Even talking about that too, other than Bubba's good run, Herbst had a good run.
Oh, yeah.
In the race
he saved
too.
that on the last lap. He got spun, and he held on to it. So,
but he could easily had a top five finish.
Yeah, and he could have also wiped out the field if he didn't save it, and that crash would have happened way earlier. So
Exactly.
A lot of credit to the 23-11 boys, though the results didn't really show it. Those three had, I think, days up until, they crashed. I think they had days that they'd be happy to hang their hat on. Of course, Reddick, it seems like he's like the new Kyle Busch, but just second. Back in the day, Kyle Busch. I mean, it still happened. What was that? 2023 Talladega. Ryan Blaney and Bubba Wallace fighting for the lead crash, and Busch is just there to take the win. But back in the day, it would just happen like that. Joey Logano and Denny Hamlin fighting at California. Kyle Busch steals the win from him. And it feels like Tyler Reddick's starting to do that, except he doesn't win. He just finishes second, which isn't bad.
I mean, obviously he had some wins last year. So,
of course.
he finds his way to the checkered flag.
Of course. It's just one of those things where it's like, eventually he has the potential to start stealing some of these wins. And I think that's probably the next step for Tyler Reddick. He's already a great driver. We made the championship for last year, regular season champ. I think he's already developed super well. I didn't follow, at least when he was coming up in the ranks. I wasn't super into the lower series like Xfinity and trucks, so I'm not too sure what the consensus was on Tyler Reddick. But I can't imagine where he is now is where a lot of people saw him. So seeing him develop into this great franchise driver is really exciting. And to see what this team can do, 23XI as a team, it gives me a lot of hope for Bubba and Herbst. So hopefully this is the year that Bubba finally puts together. It seems like he either just makes a mistake, or the team makes a mistake, or the car craps out, or even just Daytona where you're at the lead and then you get stuck in traffic and then you're caught up in a big wreck and, just luck's not on your side. Last year the biggest issue was consistency. He did not get consistent until it was almost, until he was out of time, basically. So hopefully he can maybe he can rebound from Daytona. He finished fifth in the spring race last year at Atlanta behind that 3-wide finish. A lot of people probably don't remember because obviously eyes were on that 3-wide finish, but Bubba Wallace had a chance to send it 4 wide, and he got super tight in turn 3. And I was convinced we were going to watch a 4-wide drag race to the finish. But like I said, got tight and had to slow up on the racetrack. But I think he can rebound. I'm hoping that this is finally the year where he puts it all together. Maybe, ends the dry streak, maybe even a multi-win season, which would be huge. And at the very least, I think he has to make the playoffs. But 23XI's in a really good spot right now.
Yeah, no doubt about it. But you do get to a point where it's like, all right, you got to show up. You gotta be able to build off of what you've done in the past and be able to show progress, because it can end up being a little cutthroat sometimes. Of course, you're going through phases where you're still maybe getting your footing a little bit. Perhaps you're still encountering some bad luck, but you got to be able to get a win here and there. You need to be able to consistently have some finishes where you're not falling out of playoff contention with the current format. Bubba definitely has positioned himself there. I'm seeing him getting a little bit of some higher love from Vegas with the odds, and definitely has shown the potential to be there. Had it with a lot of lead laps at Daytona, just like a good other handful of drivers, even though they didn't end up winning. A lot of guys had some bad luck, but could easily be in the mix of things in that little bit of upper echelon, possibly, more consistency with top 10 finishes. So he could be up there a little bit more with Reddick. Of course, with the team owner, with Hamlin, I would anticipate more consistency from him. But the rest of the field, it's going to be interesting, other than more of your typical names, more of those Hendrick cars, who might rise above and be able to challenge a little bit more as you're talking about getting these wins, starting to get more of the playoff field unfolded. It is going to be interesting, especially to see who might be rising above from these rookies. Other than, again, that hit that he had with Cole Custer. He had a great race too. As opposed to what happened at the end there, Herbst did. So some of these young guns coming up already. Hocevar made some limited appearances up there near the top 5, so we'll see what goes on with that. But a little bit more of some parity can happen, but still would anticipate some of those familiar names to be up near the front. Obviously, Elliott up there too. Just spoiler alert, he's definitely going to be one of my top 3 picks as we go to our prediction, but. It's something that, of course, will be a factor as we go to Atlanta. Just I'm still thinking a little bit more of a, not necessarily, you can't really say NASCAR is tranquil just because racing isn't quite tranquil, but a little bit less chaos than what we had for the first race of the season.
Absolutely, I think Atlanta is going to be exciting in the way that we want it to be, rather than crazy because a car went airborne again. But since you brought it up. Do you want to lead off the predictions for Atlanta weekend?
Yeah, from just going over this and just straight up with how guys have been performing, trying to go over the first race, some top speeds, what I saw from those guys, how I'm thinking this is going to transpire going into this race now and change up a little bit. I do think that Elliott has another good shot to be able to come out on top. At least, be in there with more of drivers in the top 10, be fighting for that position. So I'm going to have him as a member of my 3 predicted drivers here. For number 2, I'm going to go with Keselowski. I liked how he looked in Atlanta. He was running pretty good. I'm thinking he has the makings of a good season and a run to the playoffs. So just with that in mind, I'm going to select him in there. as well. And of course, I'm a little bit more higher on those guys. I wanted to go with Blaney. I liked how he was looking as well, and I think I'd be very surprised if he didn't have a great run there, but would just be a little bit higher up on my list. I wouldn't be, again, caught off guard if he has a great race. But again, I'm going to go with Elliott. Going to go with Keselowski in Atlanta. And for my slight wild cards, not really too crazy, but I'm going to go with Chris Buescher for this one. You know, my guy, he's due a little bit of that bad luck last year. I think he's still going to have that chip on his shoulder. He wants to try and rise above it and get himself solidified as a playoff driver. And what better to do than trying to solidify that earlier in the season, right? As opposed to trying waiting until the end when you're on the bubble with points. So look for Buescher to have a good run out in Atlanta. And that's going to round out my top three as we look at this race for this coming weekend.
Yeah, I like those picks a lot. I was thinking of picking Buescher myself this week. But for my personal top 10, number one, I think I would have to go with Austin Cindric.
Okay,
I think
Cindric again, yeah.
Cindric probably doesn't get the flowers he deserves, but one of the best superspeedway racers, one of the cleanest superspeedway racers. He's just very, very solid, very talented when it comes to these drafting tracks. And he was doing really well at Atlanta last year, so would not be surprised if he's able to clean it off and finish it in first. My second pick, I'll actually be going for your guy. I think Tyler Reddick.
Okay.
Like we said, he's been, the bridesmaids plenty of times, but I think he has the opportunity here.
Oh, well, maid of honor.
No, the maid of honor. Sorry, not the bridesmaid.
The top bridesmaid.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah, so the maid of honor in many of these situations just not able to get that last little bit that he needed. But I think he can get it done at Atlanta. And for my last pick, I wanted to go with Busch, but I don't want to keep doubling down on him. So instead of Kyle Busch, I will be choosing Ross Chastain.
Okay, Mr. Chastain, Melon Man.
Yes, I think he's going to be... I don't want to call him a wild card pick because he's won on these tracks. He's performed well, was leading before his crash at the 500 last year. His teammate, of course, won Atlanta 1 last year, and they did very well Trackhouse the second time around as well. So I think Chastain can get it done. I didn't want to go Suarez back-to-back in the March or in the February race, but I think he can get it done. Chastain, sorry, I kept wanting to say Cindric. Chastain has been also on the end of that bad luck, just not able to get it done. He has kind of lost a little bit of that like psychopath energy that he used to have, but that definitely hasn't taken away from his talent. I think he can get it done. All he needs is for a few things to go his way, and getting caught up in a wreck would very much help, not help with those odds. So, again, my picks, Chastain, name I'm forgetting, Cindric, and Reddick. Don't know why I had such trouble remembering who I picked.
You're good, my guy. And it is going to be a little bit more intriguing with how this race pans out, just to try and get a little bit more of a feel of how guys are running early, especially if there's less wrecks out there, a little bit more of less surviving and more of just, hey, some good, clean racing out there. Might not be as entertaining for those in attendance, for those who want to see more wrecks, but I'm just going over these races wanting to get a better gauge of how these cars are running, how guys are navigating around the potential for wrecks, and how that can play out as we go later into the season, because it just gives you a better feel for, okay, who is going to be typically shaping out more of the top 10, 15 drivers, who is going to have a better shot in the playoffs, and just overall getting a better idea of who's going to be seeded, and that, of course, will help with playoff predictions. It'll help for more of these guys to rise above and try to become a bit more of household names, because then you can get a better feel for, okay, who's going to be up here, who's going to be, these guys up near the front, as far for, sponsorships or even from a marketing standpoint, that we're going to be able to showcase better, and we could start to get a better idea of who the new faces or who the big faces of NASCAR are going to be this season. You obviously have your fan bases set already. That is what it is. You have people that are fans of certain drivers or of a few drivers, but overall fans of the sport to maybe have perhaps someone new to glom onto. So we'll see a little bit more of that, I think, unfold in Atlanta, a couple more of these super speedways, and then perhaps when we get back to road course races, some more people will be falling in love with Shane Van Gisbergen. But we'll see as that goes on. Of course, we have a little bit of time to get to some of those courses or those tracks, but that is, I think, some solid predictions of what we have right now, at least from what we saw at the first race, and how that can apply now, and just how some of these guys are going to be approaching things differently for race number 2, because once playoff spot's already taken.
Yep, we already are thinking about the playoffs. That's just the side effect of how this system is run and the way that they have designed the season and the sport. But speaking of one playoff spot being taken already, Tony, for our final turn today, I wanted to ask, last week I asked who you think would be the most improved driver of the season. This week, I want to ask, who do you think will be a surprise addition to the playoffs this year? We had Harrison Burton steal a win at Daytona and steal a playoff spot. Who do you think can either points or win their way in, shocking many of the fans?
See, I'm definitely a little bit more biased because of the fandom for 2311, but I really did like what I saw from Herbst. I mean, I need to analyze things over a few more races. Might have just been a little bit of a flash in the pan just because of how crazy Daytona was, but really liked what I saw from him. He was up into that top 10 a lot, had the potential to even have a top 5 finish. So from the young guns that we've seen that are going to try to rise above, didn't want to be too biased picking a rookie driver for who I thought was going to be a little bit more of a one to rise above, but that would probably be my surprise playoff pick. Just a new name, definitely an unrecognizable name to a casual NASCAR fan. Like, what the heck is Herbst? Like, what? For a new car at this level of NASCAR. So I'm interested to see how he continues to develop, but I'm going to go with, yet again, trying to not be biased, but just from what I saw, truly think that we could see some good things from him this season.
Yeah, and he's shown a lot of talent, especially in the Xfinity Series.
Well, yeah, exactly.
So I think him being an addition to the playoffs this season, at least, a few years down the road, it wouldn't be too shocking. But if he does in his rookie season, that would set expectations, but in a good way. But I really like the Herbst pick. I had a few drivers in mind when I came up with this question. I kind of wanted to say Preece, just because, he was so bogged down by Stuart Haas in his time there, kind of the forgotten man. And I just think that RFK is back on the upswing, almost back. I don't know if they're all the way back to what they were in the 2000s, but I think they are getting close. I like their lineup of drivers. But I won't go with Preece. I did want to go with Josh Berry, but I don't want to keep focusing on that 21 too much. So I think if I had to pick one guy who I would think people would be shocked about him making the playoffs, I would imagine it would have to be, I think I like Michael McDowell. He has only 2 career wins, and 2 of those strangest ones, with a Daytona 500 being his first career win after, what was that, 13, 14 years in the Cup Series, and then randomly won on the Indy Road Course. So he's proven to be a very good super speedway racer. He's usually always towards the front unless something happens to him. I think he could steal a win at Talladega or something. He's kind of, I could see him being like a Ricky Stenhouse, sort of just, winning on super speedways is his whole thing. But hey, if that's your bread and butter, then you got 6 chances every year to get in victory lane at least. So I think with the switch to Spire, people kind of leaned away from him than when he was at front row. I just think he might be able to. And remember, he was about 300 yards from winning his way into the playoffs last year at Talladega. So I wouldn't be too surprised if he managed to win for Spire, but I think it would be what a lot of people consider a long shot.
Yeah, but I would like that from him. He seems to be a very likable driver. Just one of those guys that's kind of out there in more of a neutral sense, doesn't have a huge fan base, but still does, as some of these guys in the field are. Also, love the scheme that he has with some of these loves cars, and that is honestly one of my favorite racing jackets. I would love to see some mass production of those.
I absolutely agree.
The design, yeah, it's just so good. It just seems to be like something that could be really easily wearable with the color scheme, with the Loves logo. It just would be a really attractive racing jacket if we could get some mass production of those. So if he starts to win a little bit more, becomes more of a popular driver, we'd like to see some of that. Just strictly from that sense, because those are really nice.
Though that would be, who would that be? That's not Josh Berry. That's not Gregson, is it? No.
For what?
Who took over his 34? The name I'm forgetting for some reason.
Oh wait.
Yeah, oh my God, I can't remember who drives the 34 right now.
I know, it's like literally on the top of my head.
Intensely
No,
Googling.
dude, on the top of my head. I'm sorry.
Who drives the 34 car in NASCAR?
It's been a long day.
It's not Michael McDowell. Stop lying.
No,
to
it's
me.
not Michael McDowell.
No, he's lying to me. Oh,
we literally were talking about this during the rain delay.
Yeah, we were. And it's really annoying because it's going to keep saying Michael McDowell, but it's not Michael McDowell.
This is disappointing.
Todd Gilliland.
God, come on.
Yeah, I don't know why I kept forgetting him. But he now, with that 34 car, has taken over that sponsorship, who also brought back Aaron's into the sport. So we have a very iconic sponsor returning to NASCAR for the first time in a while. I can't remember the last time they were in the sport.
Okay,
But
so we need Todd Gilliland to drive better.
Yes,
so
we
we could get mass production of a Loves
and an Aaron's
driver. Oh, and Aaron's. Okay.
Yes, Aaron's is actually very influential in the sport. Not only were they the spring Talladega race sponsor for the longest time, the Aaron's 499, but they were also the namesake inspiration for the Lucky Dog. They were the Aaron's Lucky Dog back in the day, which is
all right.
When a caution comes out, the first car lap down gets their lap back. Now, it's usually called the free pass, but a lot of fans still call it the Lucky Dog. So glad to have them back. We lost a lot of big sponsors over the years, but having them come back, we have Red Bull back. Now we have Aaron's back. Very excited for what that could mean for NASCAR. Listen, if you can get the Home Depot back, I would be all over the merch that they'd like. I would imagine it would probably return to Christopher Bell or Joe Gibbs to some capacity, but I would love to see Home Depot return to NASCAR.
Just to have, again, that familiar brand, and to have that throughout your stores and to connect with the driver. And we're going to go over this again and again. Familiarity, celebrity status, how much you getting your name out there. Do you have a social media presence? What can you do to improve the size and scope of what NASCAR is and push that out to fans or bring in new fans? And that's always going to be something we're looking at and trying to break down as well along with these races to see if this season is going to be somewhere where that improves. Is it going to be next season? Is this something we're still waiting patiently around and we're just continuing to tread water with where NASCAR is in the way of fan reach? But overall, it is something interesting. Say it out there again. Wish we could get a little bit more of mass production of some interesting racing jackets, because I think that could definitely be more of a popular fashion trend. Because I don't know, I haven't seen anyone that wears it look really bad in a racing jacket. I don't know, there's always look good. It's like, oh man, that looks great. Oh man, have you seen that guy or that girl wearing that? It looks really cool.
I think that would definitely help the marketability of NASCAR, because you could still, to this day, you see Tide and it's like, oh, that's Darrell Waltrip or that's Ricky Craven. You see, if you ever look at Goodwrench, it's like, okay, Dale Earnhardt. Or Shell, you could be like either Joey Logano, or if you're an older fan, you go, oh, Kevin Harvick. Or even if you want to go old school, you can go say Steve Park or something. But those cars were super iconic, especially the DEI cars with the black E on the side. But a good opportunity right now, I sent you the text earlier, Bubba Wallace's Atlanta scheme, with that classic, that iconic 80s Columbia jacket, that blue and
it's a
purple
nice
one.
car. It's a really nice car.
It is, and the opportunity where the jacket already exists, you make that into a racing jacket. That thing's gonna fly off the shelves. That car is beautiful. I could only hope to see it in Victory Lane, but that's an easy layup if you just make that into a racing jacket.
I'm telling you.
Bubba Wallace was in the commercial, in the ad for it, the reveal for it, wearing that jacket. All you have to do is put sponsors on it, and you're golden.
They're good. It's just, again, good fashion trend, fashion statement. And some people even try to wear them a little bit warmer weather. So, yeah, just throwing that out there as we round this final turn. But as we approach Atlanta, Mr. Adam, have any final thoughts?
Let's hope for a clean race, please. I know it's exciting, and of course, there's going to be crashes, but I want this race to end under green without having to throw my hands up and be like, well, that guy probably didn't deserve to win.
It'd be nice to see a little bit more of that battle, especially if it is going to be, however many wide, and, these guys trying to make their way to that checkered flag in a clean sense. Just, your car, how you drove, it propelled you to that win, and that would be fantastic to see. But we'll, of course, go over this again, break it all down as we got Atlanta coming up. It is going to be another great continuation to this 2025 NASCAR season. And thank you again for taking a stop here at the Palmetto Pit Stop. I am Tony here with Adam. If you made it to this point of the podcast, please continue to like and subscribe. We have this on the Northern South, our podcast network, as we eventually want to expand this to other platforms. We're still just doing this on YouTube, and having a video platform I know will make things a little bit better, and we want to expand to that soon as well. Still trying to get our footing in all this. This is our first full year with these podcasts, with the transition from 2024 going into 2025. But truly, thank you for being here, and we will see you next time.